on that. Basically also all this knowledge comes from a big change, a big switch on our way of dealing with the study of microbiota that comes from the end of the 20th century to the 21st. That we actually knew something about bacteria based on what we could say now obsolete system of checking these bacteria. That was the classical microbiology that was based on culture. Okay, it's what we learned. I mean, when I was studying in the late 80s, early 90s in the School of Medicine, is when I learned about how to study the bacteria. That was applied for the study of the bacterial flora, what we call right now microbiota in the colon, and we had a lot of theories based out of it, and basically we were talking only about less of 10% of what's really happening. So truly at that moment our knowledge was really very low, and that's why probably we weren't aware of what was coming next in what was the beginning of the 21st century. That is when we came with new techniques, basically based on molecular biology techniques applied to microbiology, and that made a huge difference. And all what I'm telling you today about we know about the bacterial flora or microbiota comes out of all the knowledge we gather out of it. And today, even what I'm going to tell you right now are already obsolete techniques, because right now we have techniques that are like of massive sequencing, etc., that is giving us a lot of information, and I see coming that in the next decade we'll know much more about it. But clearly, all it started with these techniques in the early 21st century. We are studying the profile today. Is like basically when we are approaching our study of microbiome, we are dealing with many aspects. Our main, let's say, knowledge comes basically from the description of the population. Sorry. Perdona. Sí. Clar, és que queda així. Sí, però no... És okay? Però no pot dir així. Vale, sorry, middle. So it comes from the description and the genomics, genome sequencing, but we are already coming to a new era that is very clear to me that it's going to be a major breakthrough, that is not only describing the bacteria, but describing what they are doing, what we will call metabolomic. And that is going to give us a new scenario when we'll know how these bacteria are actually interacting with our body, with our hormones, with our metabolism. Basically, just telling you, just to point out this, that is considered already, let's say, a classic work that made a big change. When describing the whole microbiome, one of the bacteria that was seen, that was one of the most prevalent, was what we call, and this name you'll know it over and over in my talk in the next future to come, it was Faecalibacterium prausnitzii. I should say that this bacteria before this study, and some of our studies too, was considered irrelevant. Now we know that it's the main marker or what should be a healthy ecosystem, as I'll show you later on. This concept of enterotypes, that's another very important concept that I want to give you today. I'm going to talk more about concepts and for you to get clear ideas on what we are dealing with. When we come out, we start working and studying the microbiota, what we realize is that basically there's a minimal common metabolism of this microbiota that is needed for the normal functioning of our body. The way of how you get to this minimum metabolism can be different depending on the populations or depending on the people. And basically so far, and I think that this still will go further up because already they are talking about the fourth enterotype. So far at least we know for sure that there are 3 different major enterotypes. That means different populations of bacteria that are capable to give a result of this minimal metabolism necessary for our living. So the point is, that's why the idea would be to go from what is the description itself more to the function. And when we get to this function, we'll understand that probably there will be different populations, but given what will be this new organ, this new functioning of this organ that we will call microbiota. That is the concept of enterotypes that you hear. And when I'm telling that it's an organ, it's because it's capable to be dealing with all what we consider classical metabolism. It's, a microbiota can work in lipid metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, energy metabolism, etc., as any normal, let's say, liver. So it's important for us to keep that in mind. And now let's go a little bit to talk about ecology. I was lucky enough to meet my counterparts at the University of Girona, were people who were basically not only microbiologists, but also people who were working on microbial ecology. So let's have a concept here about what is an ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem that works for bacteria and would work for any ecosystem you could think of. Basically, but what we find in the ecosystem at the beginning, at the early beginning of any system is that you have a lot of primary materials. So you don't need to be specialized. Basically, you have bacteria that are colonizers, that are growing very fast, that have a general function. As this is happening, little by little, this ecosystem evolves, and evolves to a more specialized one. We get more niches of a specialization of this bacteria. And when we call that, when we are talking about bacteria, that means that these bacteria become more facultative, more fermentative. They are capable, each of one of them, to work like to complement the other and to get a niche where they get this special metabolism for that is special metabolite. So that is what would be the normal evolution of any ecosystem, and in this case of our bowel microbiota. And here is where we come to a concept that is important for you to keep in mind, and it's good that you remember, that is dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is basically the concept of something goes wrong with this ecosystem, and it's coming back to where it started from. So being from a very rich area with a lot of different species of bacteria with different functions, all of a sudden this becomes poorer, with less species, more generalized.
After antibiotics, right?
For instance, absolutely.
The Holocaust of microbiome.
We can talk about it later on, because also but it's a clear point. It's a clear point. That's a price to pay, because people survive infections, but we are dealing then with the dysbiosis, absolutely. This is basically, in this case, when you see CD, these are two diseases that I'm dealing with, that is called ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. They are inflammatory bowel diseases that, in our case, and also because it's my area of expertise, but of course for us it was a great paradigm of how to study what dysbiosis might mean for digestive diseases. So, in this very case, was clear for us that this whatever was the disturbance of the system was bringing it to, or make it prone to have more inflammation, and that was due to this dysbiosis, to these changes in the ecosystem.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Just a question.
Absolutely.
The microbiotica is always on the gastrointestinal only.
It's because no. The very first slide was basically to tell you that our microbiome in your skin, all over you. We have you have a backpack with you, a backpack of 1.5 kg or 2. That is your bacteria that live with you, and live with you all over your skin, all over your air tract, whatever you imagine. Okay.
And brain and.
Well, that's a good point. About the brain. And the brain so far, I mean, first of all, when I was studying, they were telling me that the blood itself was sterile. That is already, that we know that is not true. Because of another area of research that I did some years ago, I was working, for instance, in liver regeneration. To tell you another area that hasn't anything to do with gut. So, you can operate the liver of a mouse, and usually it regenerates. But if that mouse doesn't have any bacteria, that has a gut that is sterile, it dies. So it's clear, for instance, it dies, it looks that you need some, we know then that there's probably, you need some inflammation driven by the bacteria that comes from the gut and probably gets into the portal vein till the liver as the startup. for the liver to regenerate. So it's just an example to tell you that many of the functions of our organs are really embedded on your microbiota. Saying so, it's very interesting to us to know, first of all, that already we know that the microbiota, for instance, of a person with depression, we know that this has some dysbiosis associated. We don't know what's the meaning of that, but when we are talking about metabolomic, it's clear that they are producing different kind of substances. Molecules. Let's say, for instance, there are some that produce serotonin. I'm not going to talk about that, but there are clusters of Clostridia that have been already related with the production of that. So eventually, maybe there won't be, we haven't really seen bacteria in the liver, but probably what you see is the effect of some bacteria on the metabolomic point of view. But bacteria so far into the brain, we haven't seen.
Because probably bacteria cannot cross the blood barrier, right?
Absolutely.
But maybe some of them are paralyzed, but the bacteria...
The bacteria so far we haven't seen that.
In meningitis, you see it.
Of course, so far, whatever, and when,
it's a disease when they are.
whichever bacteria that gets there, you have the glia. Don't forget that you have macrophages that are specialized in the brain, that usually are capable to kill them as soon as they get inside. But I want to say in this regard that I don't want to be dogmatic, because that's what I'm telling you. We were starting saying that the blood was sterile, and now we know. Who knows? Maybe there are tiny bacteria that maybe are there. We don't know. Okay, but so far is what we don't have evidence of that. I agree with you.
So you can give a lecture every year on KINNERNET, and it will be different.
Absolutely. What I'm telling you today, in 10 years' time, you're going to laugh at it. That is clear to me. At least I acknowledge it right now. And probably, but that's what I'm saying. We weren't aware of that maybe 15 years ago. Now we are aware of that because basically I'm telling you something that is new. It's the new frontier in the understanding of human body's functioning. Yes?
It's kind of interesting that you talk about the importance of this microbiota of fourth organ or third organ, and but you still call our body and the bacteria, like if there's something different. What is so different about them that they are not part of our body? Or?
No, I consider them part of our body. Is that simply we have to start to think about a human being as a symbiotic being. It's us and our bacteria. So we are symbiotic. I mean, but it's true that still, psychologically speaking, we think it's like, okay, I'm a human and there are other bacteria. Yeah. Probably we are symbiotic.
Because you say us and them, but it's
no, it's us. I agree.
But you consider them as an organ? No.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's it's what I'm telling to my students.
Actually, they communicate.
So. So simply it's because we are unveiling what this organ is going to be about, but we are doing it right now, and we don't know still the extent that is going to be influencing on our knowledge. But for me, it's clear that our students of medicine in the next decade are going to be, they will have a new subject that will be in microbiota world, because it will be very important to understand even then what is the pathophysiology, what it means the origin of diseases. You will need it, for sure. And we will be dealing with many diseases also on these aspects, on this dysbiosis and changing and modulating what is bacterial flora. Absolutely. So it's not us, them, I agree with you, it's us, but just for the sake of making the talk understandable. Just
and you are born with them.
Wow, that's another very interesting point. Absolutely, yes. First of all, another interesting dogma that is gone is that what was the amniotic liquid was sterile. We don't know right now that it's not. First, it's not. There are bacteria there. Secondly, it's very, very interesting that, of course, you get a lot of your bacteria at the moment you are born and through the vaginal tract. Okay, that is very important. That also makes you think that many of the bacteria you get there depends on the mother. So probably in the future, if you want to modulate what is going to be the next generation's microbiota, you will be dealing with the mothers. That's very important.
And also in C-section, you don't get the same.
You don't get the same.
The immune system develops differently.
Absolutely. The C-section is a cesarean. So in the C-section it's different. We know that the bacterial profile of the baby born from a natural or a C-section is different. And then secondly, another very interesting point is that breastfeeding is the one that transfers the bacteria, but this bacteria, 15 years ago, everybody thought that the bacteria that the mother was transferring were the skin bacteria. No. The ones that you have inside the milk are bacteria coming from the colon of the mother. Even, we know that there's one, I won't go for technical things, but there's a thing that is called translocation. We know that there's now a way that there's the permeability of the colon of the mothers when they're breastfeeding is increased. So they are more capable to go to the blood stream. So somehow they make it to the milk, and this is the one that is being transferred. And if you see now what is the industry of artificial milks, chemically speaking, they all got what is the chemical, let's say, aspect of what is the human milk. What they are now trying, now you'll see, is putting probiotics.
Yes.
They are working with the probiotics because the only thing that they cannot copy, because they haven't been able to copy what the mother is transferring, that is the bacteria. That is the last also frontier to get artificial milk as it should.
And the colostrum.
Well, the colostrum also, it's interesting, but colostrum has another aspect more on the also defenses, because they have antibodies there, so it has another aspect. But anyway, so it's more this breastfeeding. I agree with you that makes it, and that for me makes me aware that probably we will have to take into account that this we will have to really be modulating the microbiota of the mothers if we want to change a little bit the shape of the microbiota in the next generations to come. But I won't go to that. It's not my. But let me.
Sorry to keep interrupting more, but then so just.
I see that's an interesting topic. Eh? It's new, eh?
Tell me. So then some of the issues that you see with children's health or things like that, for instance, the apparent increase in allergies or things like that, could be related to changes in the biota that the mothers are transferring. Lack of or changes, or
Crohn's
you don't
disease.
know what's.
Crohn's disease is something I'm going to talk about, but I'll go faster because I see that we go run out of time. But Crohn's disease would be a good paradigm of that. Crohn's disease is a disease that, for instance, the first time that, the big outburst of Crohn's disease in London came with the arrival of tap water into the houses. That means basically that people started to get shower more often. We come to this idea of the hygiene. We are talking about diseases, allergies, whatever that are related, that increase in countries that have a socio-economical level that is higher. That means usually that more hygiene, etc. It looks that you need the contact with some dirtiness, some parasites, whatever, in order to regulate your response and to modulate your microbiota. We changed that 70 years ago with the arrival of all the soaps and all that. And this is just a short period of all our history as a species. So it means that we changed that equilibrium, and things like that happens. And we are just starting to understand it. I could advance you that in order to treat Crohn's disease, a guy had a very smart idea, now is working on that, to give some worms. Actually very interesting because they are worms that are permanent parasites of pigs, but not in humans. Humans, we only keep them for 15 days. So it's a very smart idea. I give it to you, you eliminate it in the natural, and it looks, it could work. It's true that now it's hidden. This guy was in Minneapolis, it was taken to Harvard, and since then, it's 5 years, I haven't heard anything, so probably I don't know if it's like it works or not, or they are working in the patent, whatever. But it's true that that is a very smart idea to approach this disease, to change this let's say, the equilibrium of this response. But I agree with you, it's clear that this comes with, it's true, if you check in Catalonia what people were dying of in early 20th century, they were dying 40 years old of an infection. Now we have an 80-year-old expectancy of life. Of course, that means that because we are struggling with some success to the infections, but that comes with a price. and it's clear to me that that's this one. So, well, this is basically what I was telling you, so I'll go ahead. Basically, now talking about Crohn's disease, that will be the inflammatory bowel disease, we come to this idea that there are factors that probably are related with the genetic of the patient and the way it responds, of the immunological response, but microbiota has a role. Okay, I'll go ahead because I talked about it. So well, that's clear. We were starting to talk about that, but we didn't know much. And now simply I'll go very fast, just to tell you that we started our research on description of inflammatory bowel disease. As we consider it to be a good paradigm of that. And as I told you, we're lucky enough of these people who are studying this. This is the lake of Banyoles, that is very nice lake close to here, like 15 kilometers out of here, or 20. And they were studying these populations. We simply took that, the system that we're using, into another ecosystem that was called the human colon. Okay. And first of all, what we checked, and I think we were, it was a good idea at the moment, we decided just to check what were the bacteria that were more here. We consider that, of course, you have bacteria that comes with your intake, with your food intake. And those comes back and forth. But in order to make sure that our results were more representative, we decided that we should check the ones that were more attached to our colon. Okay, so that is what we were doing. And first of all, taking advantage of that these people go through an endoscopy, we were taking biopsies from different parts of the colon. From that, we were like using ultrasounds in order to get rid of the two layers of bacteria that are more loosened. And then we extracted the DNA, an RCP, and then with that we were running it through a gel. I won't go much into it, but simply for you to know the system. And you see the difference, it's not a culture anymore. We simply were checking here the different bands that everyone was meant a kind of bacteria. We simply then re-amplified and sequenced it, and here we have it. And very important, this was a very, very important discovery for us, and actually we were some of the first in the world to describe it, that first of all, when you check the touch bacteria, there's no difference between being an area that has an inflammation or not. So the bacteria that is attached to you is your fingerprint. It comes with you. As an ecosystem, then we will talk about the little differences. But as an ecosystem, it comes to you. And it was as such, and the way that we checked in different parts of the colon, let's say the rectum, the colon, I won't go much into it, but you have the rectum, the transversal colon, the cecum, and the last part of the small bowel that is called ileum, there weren't any differences there. There weren't any difference there when you were checking, and any significant differences. This is a dendrogram, it's how the populations are distributed. But the main difference was having a crown or not. So, interestingly enough, we saw that the main here is when the dendrogram separates, and this is a population that is absolutely different from that from here, is the main difference is having a crown or not. So Crohn's disease has a disturbance in the ecosystem that has something special that makes it different from the rest. And that for us was, wow, very, very, let's say, something that was a boost, for us to keep on going on our research. And I think that this simply as a concept, and is this concept I was telling you about on ecosystems, and now think of a kind of a jungle. Think of an Amazonian jungle that you have an Amazonian jungle that is normal, full of animals, whatever. Usually these ecosystems are more predictable and more homogeneous. Okay, so they are healthy ecosystems. That is, when I'm representing here, this means the homogeneity of every one of the ecosystems of healthy people. These were healthy people. Were more predictable, more aggregated. Instead, Crohn's disease was absolutely random. The ecosystems of Crohn's disease were random. So when you are in a jungle in Amazonia and you start cutting the trees there, you won't know what you are doing and what is going to be the next animal or whatever, or vegetable that is going to be the king of that area. You don't know what you are doing, you don't know what this ecosystem is going to be driven to. So this is what really, this kind of concept, we were seeing the same in the Crohn's disease, on the bacterial side. And of course, that is very nice. Our microbiologists, I'll tell you something, they were excited, but I'm a doctor. So being a doctor, say, okay, well, that's nice, that how can we really use that for our patients? So can we modulate that microbiota? Is that has any concept? So one of our studies was, I'll give you very quick information on that, is for the Crohn's disease, for the very active Crohn's disease, we use monoclonal antibodies. Monoclonal antibodies basically block some molecular inflammatory molecules, in this case tumor necrosis factor, TNF, and they block the TNF, and it's the most powerful weapon gun that we have right now to fight against it. Simply, we were the first to describe what was happening with our microbiota. We were using that. We were using monoclonal antibodies. And basically, we started seeing that even if the ecosystem didn't change, I mean, the ecosystem, when you are using even the more powerful weapon to fight against Crohn's disease, still your microbiota, from the ecosystem point of view, is the same. Anyway, we started checking on the little changes. And what we saw, this is like previous to the treatment and after treatment, and probably you can see that there are bands that tend to disappear. And there were, the surprise is that there were bands that tend to appear. Mm-hmm. So there are changes. Mm-hmm. There are changes. We published, this is an article that has been published.
Do you do fecal transplant?
Sorry?
Do you do fecal transplant?
Fecal transplant?
You don't do?
No, not for this disease.
Okay.
I'll tell you why later on. Okay. I have my reasons. Still, we are very early on for the fecal transplantation. We don't know what is still a good donor. Okay. So basically, we saw little changes. We saw in other diseases that were in from digestive diseases. Sorry, because it's taking a while. And we didn't see those differences. Basically, simply here to say that all the hypotheses and what we defend is that so far we have a normal microbiota that is interacting with an immune system, and there's a change in this immune system, microbiota change, and then we use immunomodulators, and we thought that this was going straightforward from here to here. Now we know that it probably goes through there. And that is for us an important change. So that means that in the future, whatever we want to treat these people with, probably we should treat them from both points of view. Inflammation, actually, why do we do that with inflammation? Is because we are using the knowledge we gathered for inflammation, cytokines, whatever, in the 90s. And that's why now we are using anti-inflammatory drugs. Now, what is going to be the next step? We are going to understand about microbiota in the next future. In 10, 20 years, we'll be treating these diseases also from the microbiota point of view. And within anti-inflammatory drugs, what we are doing basically, we are extinguishing fires. And what we want to do, we want to act before those fires were ignited.
Sorry, just I'm not clear whether the Crohn's disease is because of the change in the bacteria, or the change in the bacteria is producing the Crohn's disease. Which is the cause?
So that's a very important question. We think that it's both. There's what we call in medicine an epiphenomenon. Inflammation is changing somehow the microbiota, and this changes probably, there's a feedback. But when we are dealing with inflammation and we are really treating it, still you don't change the microbiota. So there's something happening that is strong on the microbiota point of view. Okay?
Thank you.
Well, probably we are, what's the last time we should finish at? 5:30 already? Well, simply to tell you that, of course, now we had all this scenario and we made some decisions. First of all, to go to check for some of these little changes. And we had, as everything in the world, we had a good guy and a bad guy. And the good guy was the Faecalibacterium brusnitzii. That is this bacteria I told you about, that is a bacteria that when it's present, it tells you that ecosystem is healthy. And in this case, you call it that when they were very numerous, and when you see that it's increasing in number in these diseases, it makes things going on. Simply, we have studied, I'll tell you one thing, Faecobacterium presbyteriae is a nightmare for microbiologists because it's very difficult to culture. We were lucky enough to prepare one of our microbiologists. We got for that a lot of help from the University of Aberdeen, who were the very well experts on that, and now we are capable to do so, so we are capable to work with this Faecobacterium. And basically is, because it's anaerobic, so that's why I'm telling you. And simply one very fast thing to tell you, that was very interesting for us to check in vitro that these bacteria, this Faecobacterium, were really sensitive to changes in the pH and the bile salts. And this is very important for us because you know later, or I'll tell you right now, there's a form of Crohn's disease that affects the ileum. And you will tell me, and that's important, why? Because bile salts that we are secreting are reabsorbed actually in the ileum. So we are seeing here that probably there's something really happening on the microbiota point of view for the ileum to have this inflammation, and maybe it has to do with the metabolism of bile salts. That it's a new paradigm also in the study of this disease. Well, I'll also know that is right. Simply here is telling you that we saw changes. This is we were the first ones to describe two phenotypes of these ones. These are under, now we are patenting it, is under protection, and we had a final group that hadn't been previously described, and it's very even more sensitive on the rest, and probably is probably be a good marker for the follow-up of this disease. Actually, we're working on that right now. Escherichia coli, and we did an overeater, but I won't go to that.
What about food? How does food intake?
Food is
medicine.
It's very important, but I'm a bit biased on the idea that what we studied, were, as I told you before, is this data I'm giving you is from attached bacteria. The food, of course, makes changes because, as I told you, there are 3 layers of bacteria. It's clear that if you are influencing the 3rd layer, finally is interacting. But those changes are still more difficult to really now control. And we don't know much about them. And the point, that's why I'm telling you that we did, I think, a good choice. Because if we had relied on the changes based on these layers, we wouldn't know what we were looking for. And that is what's happening right now. I think that the research right now, you have a methodology that is very powerful. It gives you a lot of information, massive sequencing in the stools, but people don't know much what to do with that. Maybe we were a little bit like ants, little ants that started from the beginning, and now we know more, we have better targets to deal with. But it's true, it's true, foods are influencing, but still is another thing that will be more important. We are using some of these markers for the follow-up of the disease, and basically, and a very interesting point. Not only that we have more E. coli, but we describe with the French group the existence of especially Escherichia coli that are different from the rest, that are adherent and invasive, meaning that they are capable to survive inside the macrophage. It's very interesting that these bacteria, even, I mean, you see them also when there's ileal inflammation, and that genotypically speaking, nobody has been able to describe them. I mean, it's like they behave differently, but nobody knows why. And now I'm going to tell you one thing that for me is very interesting. First of all, we know that these E. coli that are involved in Crohn's disease, when you do in vitro a kind of a culture with what would be the equivalent of let's say a typical Western diet, that would be with high content of fat and sugar, they grow very, very nicely. And secondly, a very, very, very interesting point that we are studying right now. This kind of E. coli are very frequent in digestive diseases, diarrheas of cats, 82%, and dogs. And all of a sudden you say, well, one thing that is happening also when there's a society that is evolving is that you tend to live with your animals now, the typical cats inside your home. So that would be also another way to transfer this, or at least to increase the critical mass of this bacteria in our bowels. Who knows? This is something that we are really researching right now. And well, only to tell you that out of it and out of all this knowledge, we were able to see some bacterial markers that weren't previously described related with colon cancer and with for the follow-up of Crohn's disease, and we created a startup out of it that is called Good Gut. And right now we are, and I'm talking to you about this Good Gut story. Basically, as you know, we are in a world that there's an increase on colon cancer, and there are programs that are led by driven by the government in order to try to prevent the colon cancer, that are based basically on what we call the fecal occult blood test. That is taking the urine stools, they check if there are traces of blood there. Problem with that is that it's the best thing we have, but the problem with that is that you can have hemorrhoids and also be the cause of the bleeding. So that makes you do too many colonoscopies. That means a lot of money for the government. Whatever marker we would be able to find that is more what we could call more sensitive and more specific would be a major breakthrough for us and for the follow-up. We think that we have that, and we are working right now on this marker, and that is based on the bacteria. And why we say that, and it's when it coming about the link, is because the bacteria, for us, is our missing link between the onset, the outburst of the genetic mutation that we bear. I mean, probably we have a mutation that is making us more prone to have a colon cancer, then we start eating whatever in the environment. And these changes in the bacteria are the ones that really are starting up, that make this mutation really start going into the colon process. That's why we think that our method will be better to really see if you have a cancer going on in a very early stage. I mean, very early and more specific.
What about curing? Will it change the way you cure also?
Absolutely. We have a great scientist, a Catalan scientist working in epigenetics that is called Xavier. Professor Xavier is working in epigenetics. Epigenetics is the changes in cancer. And of course, he's really dealing with the idea of trying to prevent that. For me, it's clear to me that in the future, the way to prevent that will be with the bacteria. I think it's the link that is missing there. I mean, epigenetics is interesting, but epigenetics makes sense if you put what is making those epigenetics work.
Well, changes, yes.
So probably, I'm saying because for us it's a topic that we follow very, very closely. So, well, that is our system, and what we are saying. There are in this moment, there are other markers in the market, but we are the only ones who are really dealing with microbiota. That makes us different, and we think that we can be more pre-symptomatic than the rest. This is our team. We have also the chance to have an external group for wherever you are not maybe aware. Dr. Castells is the director of the digestive center in Hospital Clinic, the main hospital in Barcelona, that is a worldwide known scientist in colon cancer, one of the leading people. This is the microbiologist, Mariona, that is our CEO, and Jaume, that maybe someone.
What's the name of the startup?
Good Gut.
Good.
Gut. We found the name, it was light and easy to remember. And basically we are going to another step that is also for the follow-up of Crohn's disease. We have another marker on the way, and also markers for dysbiosis. And we think that there are also, basically we have a know-how now, that we are like having a kind of working for a platform that will give different issues to that. And basically this all, I'm basically simply the spokesman of a whole team, that without them I will be here, from the University of Girona, from my collaborators in the hospital, people from the Good Gut itself, from the Institute of Research, and of course from people from Aberdeen that were very, very important at the beginning of our research with fecal bacteria. And just for the end, I would like you to know that we are in Catalonia. We are dealing with it's not here. You know that we have problems with our flag being banned in the next game. So I want you to tell you that it's true that Spain doesn't understand that freedom of expression is beyond whatever you
No,
think.
no original.
That was, I know, James. That was before I know that the judge went back to.
Giudice,
Sì, it was on pause.
sì, ma sì, sì.
Thank you very much.